Hello my fiery friends, the Infernoman here with our latest gameplay and deck tech video to show you. In this series we highlight a random deck on MTG Arena, and it can range from a spicy homebrew to a tier 1 meta deck that is hot on ranked. And if you do enjoy these videos that we make, all I ask for you is to give a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, as I would greatly appreciate your support. Now, if you like the deck we're playing today, I'll leave a link in the details below so you can give it a spin for yourself on Arena. Keep in mind that these videos will be pure gameplay, no commentary style, so you can enjoy the game. But if you do want to hear my deck tech analysis and thoughts, I'll leave that at the end of the gameplay. So without further ado, let's take the deck that you see right now and get started. And there you have it, everybody. That is our Heliod's life deck for Historic Brawl. Now, earlier this week you saw we did for Midweek Magic already a life gain deck, but I kind of started thinking, you know what, can it be possible to play a budget version of a life gain deck? And how budget are we talking? You kind of already saw from the title, we're only using one mythic. So the gimmick, of course, is to just take advantage of how powerful Heliod is by just getting life gain, pumping up everything we can little by little, grinding out that victory. Again, you saw from the gameplay footage, just one match took quite a while to get through, but there's a reason why. Without any of additional rares or mythics in the 99, it definitely does mean that you're going to have to be a little bit more creative with how you want to get this deck to go off. However, White does have a decent amount of cards now that can allow us to get through utilizing only just this one mythic in the deck. So really quick, let's talk about this. Heliod Suncrown is a 3-mana legendary enchantment creature god that's 5/5 and indestructible. And as long as your devotion to white is less than 5, Heliod is not a creature. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or enchantment you control, and then for 2 mana, 1 of any color and a white, another target creature gains lifelink until end of turn. So you can kind of see this card is very powerful for what it does. I thought it was a really good one to use for a budget build for this, mostly because 1, it's indestructible, and 2, it doesn't come in as a creature, so it allows it to be more harder to get rid of once it enters the battlefield. So keep that in mind as when we talk about this deck. So otherwise, most of our cards are going to be focused around just either putting out a bunch of creatures, some tokens, gaining life along the way to pump everything up, so that way Heliod can go off once we have it enter the battlefield. But otherwise, of course, the life gain is just to help us sponge stuff until we can then start going off, going wide, whatever we need to do to get to that victory. So you'll have, of course, many of these stable life gain cards like a Johnny's Welcome out here. You have otherwise cards such as Soul Warden. These are basically what will help us trigger off whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Just that 1 life gain total doesn't really mean much in the long run, but little by little they do add up very quickly. Cards like that, including stuff like Fountain of Renewal, getting us a little bit every turn will help us keep in the game. In the other slots, you have other cards that sponge things such as Nyx's Fleece Ram. If you're trying to like gain some card advantage and also gain some life, you have Revitalize, Potion of Healing, you have Rune of Sustenance. You basically get the idea of like pretty much all these cards, budget as they may be, do a decent job of ensuring that we can get stuff going. But we do have some flexibility, some ways of just not just of course gaining life, because that doesn't really get us a victory. We need to make sure that of course we can have some utility. We have some creatures that, as you can kind of see as we're kind of scrolling through this, they will help us ensure that we can protect our creatures, like as Elsid's of Life's Bounty. You have cards such as Boon of Safety. They can also help us filter, protect our stuff, and ensure that we can still get some stuff through. You can see cards such as Hunted Witness that can give us another token, even if it does die. Healer's Hawk, of course. But you kind of notice that we're utilizing quite a bit of 1-drops that don't seem like they do much, but there's a reason why to that. Abiding Grace, it helps us keep these tiny little creatures coming back from the graveyard to the battlefield if we have this out. It also, of course, gains us 1 life at the end of our end step to help us, of course, synergize with Heliod. But that 1 ability at the bottom allows us to keep bringing back some of these weak cards, which allow us to get a little bit more out of it. So if we lose our cards, such as our Selfless Savior to protect other stuff, if we lose cards like Hunted Witness or Elsid's of Life's Bounty, you basically get the idea. We can just keep bringing them back, which is making it very difficult for our opponent to close out the game. As you kind of already saw from the gameplay footage, it's very slow, as I mentioned before. It's very grindy, but we can get there. Some other cards in the 2-drop slot is where a lot of our meat is, where we can start pumping up stuff, protecting our abilities. Birth of Meletis to give us a little bit of ramp, Environmental Studies, Diamond Mirror, of course, to give us another extra bit of life. Sanctify destroys another artifact or enchantment. We have, of course, some other cards that can help us go wide. Griffin Aerie is a very powerful card. We can keep gaining a lot of life throughout this deck, and it can help us keep going off by adding on more Griffin tokens, which can help us not only get some flyers onto the battlefield and get evasive damage in, but also it helps us close out the game a little faster. Some other cards that can do some pretty powerful damage if left unchecked, such as Fencing Ace. You have other cards such as Basri's Solidarity, a 2-mana card that puts a +1/+1 counter on each creature which you control. And then obviously when you go to the 3-drop slot, we have a couple more cards that can slowly just start building up more value for us. Priest of Ancient Lore to give us some life and a card draw. We have cards such as Omen of the Sun, again, same thing, puts out creatures, gains us life. You kind of can see already that the main focus, of course, is besides the life gain, we can build up quite a few tokens to help us keep triggering off more life gain stuff and just help pumping up big cards such as our Angel of Vitality. You have other cards such as Bereaved Survivor, who actually can bring back a lot of our cheaper cards back to the battlefield. And then we don't have too much in terms of spot removal for this deck, mostly because, again, when you're playing a budget deck, you don't really have access to it, but white has some options. So some of it is going to be like Banishing Light, you have Conclave Tribunal, just to name a few, but we're not focusing too much in this deck about actually spot removal, only just when we actually need it. Most of the deck is going to be focused, again, on just trying to then put out as many creatures as possible, building up all the value that we possibly can do, and just force our opponent to either concede because they can't deal with some of the threats that we may have out there because they're just too big to handle, or hopefully we will just grind them out of losing enough cards where they just don't have any more answers after they've been trying to respond to every single thing we put out on the battlefield. In fact, you kind of already saw from that match alone, that single Adonto Vanguard, if you could put this out with a Heliod Suncrown, it is insanely hard to get rid of this card, because once you start triggering off the life gain, adding it to, say, the Adonto Vanguard, it has Indestructible, you pay the 4 life, but you give it lifelink, it'll just keep building up itself, and as you saw, it just took this one card to get us to victory. So just keep that in mind, of course. Otherwise, not really much else I can say about the deck. As I always mention, the deck list, of course, is in the details below, so you can go through it yourself. There obviously are going to be some cards that I probably may have missed, so if you want to point out cards that I should have added to the deck, be sure to leave a comment below, and I would love to hear from you. Finishing off the deck, finally, we're just going to have a couple more options to talk about, such as we have 21 Plains, Gate to the Citadel, Secluded Steppe, Sheffield Dunes, some other utilities, Broker's Hideout, Cavalry Courtyard. They help us fetch out some of our extra planes and also give us some life gain. That's mostly what we're there for, is the trigger. Field of Ruin, the catch-all that just snipes away pesky utility lands that our opponent may have. Radiant Fountain for another extra life. Roadside Reliquary to give us a little bit more card draw if we have an artifact and enchantment out. And the Zaffirin Void, nothing major about that, just scries us. You basically, again, I'm going to emphasize this one more time when I talk about this deck, is it can go off, but don't be surprised if it's going to take a while, because 1, you're on a budget, and 2, it's very slow and grindy because we don't have anything major. However, all you really do need, however, is to make sure that you can get Heliod out, protect it, and then if your opponent has no way of answering it, then we can slowly keep building up a ton of value little by little. It will be slow going, but I highly recommend, if you're a budget person, give this deck a try, and I'm sure you will not be disappointed. That's all I have for you today. Thanks again for watching, everyone, and just remember that no matter what you do play in the game of life, always be sure to burn bright. Later!